What human beings fear the most is not the darkness outside, but the darkness within the mind, when confronted with the question what truly is good and evil. From childhood, we are taught that there are two opposing forces, always in conflict. On one side is good, on the other side is evil. That life is a battlefield, and all we can do is hope for good to triumph over evil. But what if that entire understanding has been wrong from its very foundation? What if evil has never had substance at all, but is only a veil of illusion, a temporary shadow caused by the absence of light? Imagine walking into a dark room. All it takes is flipping a switch, and light floods in while darkness instantly disappears. Darkness does not resist. It does not exist as a separate power. It is simply the absence of light. In the same way, what we call evil is not a force equal to good, but merely the void, when humans move away from the absolute source of light. What causes many people to suffer is precisely the illusion that evil has power, that suffering has substance. That belief makes them live in fear, as if besieged by an invisible enemy. The world is filled with stormy news, images of war, anxieties about illness, finances, the environment. Just by opening the screen of a phone, one sees an entire universe of instability. And in the swirl of it all, a question arises: if there truly exists an absolute good, why is there so much suffering? If light is present, why is there still darkness? This question does not haunt only philosophers and theologians, but every ordinary person in sleepless nights, in moments of helplessness. The answer lies in the nature of consciousness. Good is not merely an ethical choice, but the foundational essence of reality itself. Evil is nothing but distance, a mistaken perception when the mind is cut off from its source. It is like a sleepwalker believing he is running in the dark, when in fact he need only awaken to realize that light has always been present everywhere. The problem is not a lack of light, but eyes that remain shut. When someone lives in fear, they project distorted images. The mind becomes a clouded mirror, reflecting reality under the heavy dust of worry and doubt. They see the world as unjust, others as enemies, the future as bleak. Yet this is not truth, only the warped version created by a disconnected mind. If the light returns, if the connection is restored, all those distortions vanish like a dream dissolving at sunrise. People often ask then, is the suffering I endure real or not? The illness, the loss, the betrayal, each touches every fiber of emotion. How can one say these are illusions? The answer is not denial, but deeper vision. Suffering is a real experience for a mind that has been cut off, but its essence has no power to exist on its own. It is only the consequence of consciousness temporarily straying from wholeness. Once the return to source happens, suffering has nowhere to cling. Observe small moments in daily life. When you are steeped in anger, everything around you takes on a negative shade. A harmless word is interpreted as an insult, but when you are filled with love, that same word becomes gentle, even endearing. Reality does not change, only your consciousness shifts. This shows that what we call good and evil does not come from external circumstances, but from how the mind casts light or shadow upon reality. Going further, the concept of evil has been given power as an opposing force, forming the basis of mythology, religion, and philosophy. But the truth is simpler. There is only one power, absolute good. If two powers coexisted, the universe would have collapsed into chaos. It is only because the human mind refuses to accept oneness that it created the myth of two opposing forces. That very myth keeps people living in fear, waiting for the day good conquers evil, instead of awakening to the fact that evil has never had substance. When this concept is reversed, a liberation occurs. Instead of feeling small amid the storm of some evil force, you realize that there is only one power at work, and you can merge with that flow at any moment. This liberation is not an empty consolation, but the foundation of inner freedom, because from the instant you know that evil has no power of its own, fear loses its root. And when fear disappears, suffering dissolves too. It must be emphasized this is not vague philosophy, but a spiritual law. Just as in physics, where darkness has no speed, no mass, no essence, it is only the absence of light. In the same way, evil has no law, no power, no independent existence. Every darkness waits only for a ray of light to dissolve, and that ray of light is the return of consciousness to the absolute good. If the reality you see is full of chaos, do not mistake it as proof of evil. See it as a dark room. No matter how thick the darkness, it cannot resist a single candle. No matter how chaotic reality appears, it cannot withstand when your consciousness returns to light. The power of darkness is always zero. The power of light is always infinite. Thus, reversing the concept of good and evil is not for philosophical debate, but to place in your hand the key to freedom. Every anxiety, every fear, every obsession with a surrounding evil force can vanish. The moment you dare to look directly, evil has no substance. There is only one power, absolute good. That awareness is the beginning of a new journey, not living as one hunted by shadows, but as one carrying the torch that illuminates reality. And that is the foundation from which every principle, every practice, every transformation in your life begins. Once you know that darkness has never had power, you no longer need to fight in vain. You need only flip the switch of consciousness, allowing the light that has always existed to flood back in. From that moment, the entire story of good and evil is rewritten not by fear but by the certainty of indestructible light. Darkness has never been an entity. It has no mass, no power, no separate structure. Darkness exists only in the eyes of those who lack light. When light appears, darkness vanishes instantly, leaving no trace, requiring no struggle. And if the darkness in a room is nothing but an empty space, then what we call evil in human life has no power other than the absence of absolute good. This is a simple truth, yet it has been obscured for centuries by layers of prejudice and fear. Evil only appears when consciousness strays from its source of light. When the mind is severed from its root of goodness, it begins to construct distorted images. Those images have no substance, yet they cause humans to tremble, to worry, and to believe they are living amid an opposing force. In reality, all of it is but a trick of a disconnected mind. Just like in a dream, you may see monsters, chasms, terrifying scenes, but upon waking, nothing remains but emptiness. Evil, in essence, is also nothing more than the dream of an unawakened mind. The danger does not lie in evil itself, but in the fact that humans believe it to be real. That belief is like trembling in a dark room, convinced that the darkness has the power to imprison you when all that is needed is to flip a switch. How many people live their entire lives in fear, carrying the burden of thinking they are surrounded by hostile forces? But the truth is, there are no such forces. There is only the absence of light, and this absence can be shattered by a single ray of conscious light. Looking closer, we see that every expression of evil is only the absence of a noble quality. Hatred is nothing but the absence of love. Greed is only the absence of trust in abundance. Envy is the absence of gratitude. Suffering is the absence of awareness of one's unchanging essence. There is no such thing as the power of darkness. There are only fragments lacking light, places where humans forget their inner source of radiance. Ask yourself, how many times in life have you felt swallowed by that darkness? How many times have you looked at misfortune and silently thought, this is proof that the world is full of evil? Do you dare to look directly at that concept and admit perhaps all of it is only illusion? This question is not for philosophical reasoning, but for you to pause and look into your own life. Because when you realize that evil is merely the absence of good, a door of liberation immediately opens. And right now, I want to ask you something very personal. Are you ready to step through that door? Are you ready to put down the old belief that evil has power and instead recognize that there is only one power, the power of light? If you are truly ready, let me know by commenting, "I am ready," or simply by typing the number 1. That simple act shows that you have dared to begin the desire for change from this very moment, and it lets me know that you are present with me, that we are not alone on this journey. Your presence is priceless, a testament that the flame of light is being kindled in many hearts. I am more grateful for that than any words can express. Returning to the essence of the matter, observe light never argues with darkness. It simply appears and darkness instantly dissolves. This is the great lesson. When you face a situation where evil seems to prevail, do not waste energy fighting it. Do not treat it as an enemy with equal power. Bring in the light. Bring it with a clear thought, a loving perspective, an unshakable faith in absolute goodness. Then the illusion will fade like morning mist before the sun. This also explains why so many people find that the more they resist evil, the stronger it seems to become. Because in fighting, they unknowingly feed energy to the illusion. They affirm that it has power, and their minds thus reinforce the illusion more solidly. But when you stop the battle, when you no longer supply energy to the illusion, it automatically loses strength and disappears. Just like when you stop dreaming, the dream dissolves without needing to be defeated. On the spiritual level, what we call evil has never been created and therefore has never existed. Only good and absolute good truly has essence. And when you live from that perspective, every experience changes. Fear has no ground to stand on. Each time you see darkness, instead of panicking, you smile and recognize, here there is only a lack of light, and you yourself can illuminate it. Imagine living a day like that, no longer afraid of the news, no longer drowning in the pessimism of the world. You know that all of those dramas are only temporary darkness. And like any darkness, it has no roots, no power, no permanence. A ray of conscious light, a decision to turn toward goodness, is enough to transform the entire scene. When you accept this truth, you no longer need to ask, how can good defeat evil? Because that question is flawed from the start. Good does not need to win. Evil has nothing with which to resist. Good simply needs to be present. And when it is present, there is no such thing as evil. That is the illusory nature of darkness. That is the simple yet liberating truth. Evil has no power. It is only the absence of light. Realize this and you stop being afraid. You begin to live as one who carries the torch, no longer fleeing through the night, but lighting the path for yourself and for all who are still groping in the dark. Every spiritual foundation begins with an unchanging truth. There is only one power in the universe, and that power is absolute good. This is not a comforting statement, nor is it a vague promise, but the foundational law of all existence. If there were more than one power, the world would have collapsed into chaos long ago. If there were a parallel opposing force, reality could not sustain harmony, and the universe could not continue to operate in the precise order that we now witness. God is absolute good. Not occasionally good, not partly good and partly judgment, but absolutely good, unchanging, undivided, unmixed. This absoluteness is not the same as the concept of good in daily life, which shifts with culture, with era, with prejudice. Absolute good is the pure foundation, the essence of all life. Every beauty, every love, every abundant expression of life flows from this essence. When our minds connect to this stream, we feel safe, clear, and free. When our minds stray from it, illusions appear, suffering surrounds us, and we mistakenly believe another power is in control. Awareness of God as absolute good changes the way we see the world entirely. Instead of trembling before adversity, we realize every imperfect phenomenon is only the absence of connection, not the presence of an evil force. When someone is steeped in fear, they see the world shrouded in chaos. But when someone abides in the consciousness of absolute good, they perceive that even amid the storm there remains an unchanging foundation sustaining everything. Like the still ocean beneath the surface waves that truth never alters, the difficulty for humans lies in their belief that circumstances have power. They grant strength to money, to public opinion, to disease, to social upheaval. They believe these things can dictate their destiny. But that is a fundamental error. There is only one true power, and it is not found in external conditions. External conditions are but reflections of consciousness. When we identify with fear, we create experiences that reflect fear. When we identify with absolute good, we create experiences that reflect perfection. This law is as precise as mathematics, not dependent on feelings or personal opinions. It must be emphasized, God is not an angry deity who can bestow or withdraw blessings. God is the very essence of absolute good, as the sun can only shine, as the ocean can only be wet. Goodness does not come and go. It is the unchangeable essence. If we perceive an absence of that light, the cause is never in the source of light, but in the veil covering our eyes. The problem never lies with the origin, but with human awareness. Imagine an electric current. When the switch is closed, the bulb shines. When the switch is open, darkness prevails. No one says that electricity has vanished or lost its power. It is still there, ready to flow. Only the circuit is broken. In the same way, absolute good always exists unchanging. Only when our minds disconnect do we see darkness and mistakenly believe evil has power. Realizing this, you no longer need to search outside. You no longer think that luck, fate, or the power of others determines your life. There is only one power, and that power already dwells within you. All worries, all struggles, all fears fade when you stand firmly on this foundation. The strength of this foundational truth lies in the fact that it does not change no matter what happens. A person may lose their job, their money, face illness, yet absolute good is never diminished. When they hold their awareness steady in this truth, they become a stable center amid the storm. Circumstances may shift, but they themselves are no longer shaken. And it is precisely in that steadiness that circumstances begin to change as well. For external reality is always the reflection of inner consciousness. What happens when someone truly accepts that there is only one power? They stop blaming. They stop believing that someone or something outside can obstruct them. They no longer see themselves as victims. They become conscious co-creators, not by the power of ego, but by merging with the absolute source. They live in a new reality where every event becomes an opportunity to express the good flowing through them. Looking back through history, we see that every enlightened being affirmed the same truth. There is only one power, and that power is absolute good. Some call it love, some call it life, some call it light. The name is not important. The essence is one. The truth is unchanging. And that truth is not reserved for sages alone, but for every human being in any place at any time. If this truth is not firmly grasped, all spiritual practices become feeble attempts. You may pray but still believe evil has its own power. You may meditate but still fear the force of external circumstances. You may recite scriptures yet still think you are a victim of fate. In that case, words are nothing but hollow sounds. But when you stand firmly on the foundation that there is only one power, and that power is absolute good, then every word, every thought, every action carries the energy of transformation. This truth needs no defender. It exists independently of belief or doubt. But once it is accepted in the mind, it changes everything. It transforms the anxious into the peaceful. It transforms the weak into the strong. It transforms the lost into the guided. Not because of miracles from outside, but because they stop giving power to illusions. They look directly at reality and see that only one power is at work, absolute good. And this is the turning point of every journey. From this moment onward, every practice, every technique, every principle must be grounded on this foundation. Without it, all efforts are nothing but futile resistance. With it, every step is guided, upheld, and illuminated by unchanging strength. Thus, the foundational truth is not a beautiful idea, but the cornerstone upon which the entire spiritual life is built. When you stand upon this stone, no storm can sweep you away, because you know with certainty God is absolute good, and there is no other power besides this. What the senses bring to us is only the outer shell of reality. The eyes see shapes, the ears hear sounds, the hands touch matter, and from there, the mind hastily draws conclusions. But every sense is limited. The eyes cannot perceive infrared, the ears cannot hear ultrasonic frequencies, the hands cannot feel the invisible electromagnetic currents that surround us. So why do we believe that this world is confined only to what the senses report? It is blind trust in the senses that causes humans to live in a narrowed reality, always haunted by circumstances. When illness appears, the eyes see the body weakening, the ears hear the diagnosis, and the mind immediately believes this is the final truth. When financial upheaval arises, the eyes see negative numbers in the account, the ears hear pessimistic news, and the mind quickly concludes that crisis is inevitable. But all of this is only the result of looking through the physical eye, and this always leads to fear, anxiety, and helplessness. The spiritual eye opens a different way of seeing. It does not deny what the senses report, but it is not bound by those limits. It looks through appearances to see essence. When the body is sick, the spiritual eye does not stop at symptoms, but perceives the unchanging life force operating in every cell. When finances are tight, the spiritual eye does not stop at the numbers, but perceives the infinite flow of supply always present. When relationships are broken, it does not stop at conflict, but sees the opportunity for love and understanding to grow. What makes the spiritual eye different is its power of discernment. It does not merely record events, but evaluates from a deeper dimension. It is not enchanted by the surface, but penetrates to the essence. While the senses see darkness and call it power, the spiritual eye recognizes that darkness is only the lack of light. While the senses see suffering and call it proof of evil, the spiritual eye understands it is only the space where good has not yet been acknowledged. This discernment is not a distant philosophy, but a practical power. Recall the last time you were overwhelmed with worry about a problem, only to later discover it was not nearly as serious as you thought. In that moment, you let the senses and emotions lead you. Had you seen with the spiritual eye from the beginning, you would not have wasted energy on useless fear. The spiritual eye is not fooled by first impressions. It waits, it observes, and it recognizes the truth hidden behind the veil. Those who stand firm in the storm are those who know how to see with the spiritual eye. When others panic, they remain calm. not because they are naive, but because they see something others do not. They know that truth does not lie in the news, in upheaval, in rumor, but in the unchanging essence of absolute good. With that vision, they make wise decisions when others are in confusion, and this discernment saves them from fatal mistakes. The spiritual eye is also the compass to distinguish between the true voice of intuition and the chaotic echoes of fear. The senses always report situations based on the past and habit, while intuition comes from the unchanging depth. When you listen with the spiritual eye, you can tell which signals are false and which are the truths to hold. This is like distinguishing true light from a mirage. Once you learn to see with the spiritual eye, you are no longer deceived by outer appearances. More importantly, the spiritual eye helps us choose our attitude. When we see life through the senses, we often react automatically with anger, fear, or despair. But when we see through the spiritual eye, we respond with awareness. Here is an opportunity for light to shine. The difference may seem small, but it shapes the entire quality of life. A reaction from fear can create more tragedy. A reaction from awareness can open the door to solutions. The remarkable thing is that the spiritual eye does not require a complex ritual to open. It only needs practice in each moment. When you face a situation, ask yourself, am I seeing with the limited senses or with the spiritual eye? Am I being pulled into surface impressions, or am I seeing the true essence? That question is like a switch moving you from the darkness of illusion to the light of truth. With enough practice, the spiritual eye becomes a habit. It allows you to see what others cannot. It enables you to walk on water while others still sink in the waves. It turns you into a lamp in the darkness, not because you try hard, but because you have learned to see with the inner light. From there, you are no longer a victim of circumstances, but the one who shapes them. The senses give us data, but only the spiritual eye gives us truth. And that truth is always simple. There is only one power, and that power is absolute good. Every darkness is only the absence of light. Every suffering is only the absence of awareness. Every fear is only the absence of love. Once you discern this clearly, life changes at its root. When the spiritual eye opens, you no longer chase after external fluctuations. You know you do not need to fight darkness only to bring light. You know you do not need to battle what is called evil only to reconnect with absolute good. And you know you do not need to panic before circumstances only to see with a deeper vision through the veil. That is the power of discernment. It not only frees you from fear, but makes you a pillar for those around you. Because when you see clearly, you radiate peace. When you are no longer enchanted by illusions, you bring light even to those who have not yet awakened. And thus, step by step, person by person, the world grows brighter. The spiritual eye is not a privilege for the few, but an inherent capacity of all. It waits only for you to use it. And once you choose to see through that eye, you will no longer wish to return to the narrow vision of the senses. For once you have seen truth, you cannot believe in illusion again. And from that moment you enter a new life, a life no longer limited by what the eyes can see, the ears can hear, but one opened through the vision of spirit, clear, steadfast, and free. Your mind never rests. Whether you are awake or asleep, it works ceaselessly like a vast factory running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It does not wait for special commands. It does not wait for you to sit down to meditate or pray. It continuously produces images, thoughts, and beliefs, and it is precisely these products that become the invisible blueprints of your life. External reality is never random, but a direct reflection of the mental factory operating tirelessly within you. Pause and observe the chair you are sitting on, the room you are in, or the device you hold in your hand. All once existed first as an idea in someone's mind. A sketch, an image, a vision, and from that matter was arranged, and reality gradually took shape. What happens in the material world happens just as precisely in your life. Experiences of relationships, health, finances all originate from the mental images your mind has been producing continually. What is astonishing is that the mind does not distinguish between thoughts you deliberately create and thoughts you unconsciously repeat. It is faithful like a worker who only knows to follow the blueprint handed down. If you nurture thoughts of fear, it immediately drafts the blueprint of crisis and gradually brings it to experience. If you plant images of peace and abundance, it produces the blueprint of prosperity and gradually manifests it in life. This mental factory is entirely neutral, never judging right or wrong. It only takes orders from you, from what you continuously focus on, emotionalize, and believe. This is why those who worry constantly often encounter the very things they fear. They do not realize that every minute they allow anxiety to dominate is another minute the mental factory receives a blueprint for unrest. Conversely, those who maintain gratitude and confidence frequently encounter opportunities because they are continually producing the blueprint for ease. This law operates silently, yet with precision like the law of gravity. It is impartial, showing no favoritism, leaving no one out. You can picture the mind as a garden. Every thought is a seed. The mental factory is the fertile soil, always ready to nurture whatever seed is planted. The soil does not care whether the seed is wheat or a weed. It simply nurtures faithfully. If you plant good seeds, you harvest abundance. If you plant toxic seeds, you reap thorns. It is the repetition of thought that determines the landscape of life. A fleeting thought cannot create much, but a thought repeated, fed with emotion and belief, becomes an inevitable reality. Recall times you worried about a situation, and eventually it happened exactly as you feared. It was not fate mocking you. It was you who had been drafting the blueprint through days and months. Your mind continually envisioned, felt, and believed, and the mental factory faithfully turned it into reality. By the same mechanism, when you focus on a positive goal with strong belief, you witness strange coincidences and opportunities appear. The world seems arranged for your desire to manifest. This is not magic, it is the law of the mental factory at work. The key here is continuity. The mind produces non-stop, so controlling it for a few minutes of prayer while spending the rest of the day in fear cannot change much. You must build a habit, maintain consistent direction. When the entire flow of thought is oriented toward good, the mental factory begins to produce an entirely different reality. The power lies in persistence, in not planting the seed just once, but continually nurturing it with focus, emotion, and belief. The mental factory also has another crucial feature. It multiplies anything you pay attention to with intense emotion. A thought charged with strong feeling imprints deeply into the subconscious, becoming a lasting pattern. That is why painful memories cling tightly, while vague ideas slip away. If you wish to reprogram the mental factory, you must not only think but feel with your whole being. Let belief and positive emotion merge, then repeat, so the mental factory understands this is the blueprint you truly want it to produce. The formula is clear attention plus emotion plus belief equals a mental image with creative power. Each time you worry, you give attention. Each time you tremble, you add emotion. Each time you think this will surely happen, you sign belief. And thus the complete blueprint is formed, and the mental factory begins to materialize it. Conversely, when you consistently think of peace, breathe gratitude into it, and believe firmly that it is real, you sign a new blueprint, and that peace inevitably becomes your lived experience. This truth may surprise you, but it also opens boundless freedom, because if reality is only the result of mental blueprints, then you can completely change the blueprint. You do not need to fight circumstances, you do not need luck, you do not need to blame fate. You only need to return within, take charge of the mental factory, and persistently produce worthy images. When the blueprint changes, the outer structure of life automatically changes too. This is true mastery of life. Not forcing external conditions, but mastering the inner realm. Not trying to control others, but reprogramming the flow of thought. And once you have mastered the mental factory, you are no longer a victim of circumstance, but the architect of reality. That factory never stops, so you cannot afford to be careless. Every thought, no matter how small, is a seed planted in the field of consciousness. Every emotion, no matter how fleeting, leaves an imprint. What you repeat today will be tomorrow's experience. That is why mindfulness in each moment is the key. You may not control every event, but you can always control the blueprint you hand to the mental factory. Recognize the value of this law. It not only explains why worries come true, but also shows the path to turn desires into experiences. It gives you the key to shift from unconsciousness to awareness, from reaction to creation, from passivity to mastery. Your mind is always at work, but you can decide its direction. And when that direction is rightly chosen, your whole life transforms. This is the power of the 24/7 mental factory. It never rests, never discriminates, never judges. It only takes orders from you. Give it blueprints worthy of your dignity and your potential. Because in the end, every experience of your life is the product of that very factory, the product of the thoughts, emotions, and beliefs you have nurtured day by day. Every achievement, every failure, every experience you are living has the same root, the creative formula by which the mind operates. No one escapes it, no one is exempt, because this is not a choice, but a law. The formula is so simple it seems hard to believe. Attention plus emotion plus belief equals a mental image with creative power. Once these three elements converge, reality must reflect it. It is as exact as mathematics, not dependent on morality, opinion, or circumstance. Attention is the first gateway. Whatever you place your mind upon begins to be magnified in your life. Recall the times you worried about something, however small, and the more you thought about it, the larger and heavier it felt. That is the power of attention. Your mind is like a magnifying glass, enlarging whatever it focuses on. If you direct the lens toward fear, fear expands. If you direct it toward faith, faith is strengthened. Attention is the initiating energy deciding which blueprint you will send to the mental factory. But attention alone is not enough. What turns a thought into power is emotion. When you attach emotion to an image, you charge it with energy. Notice that unforgettable memories in life are not due to details, but to the emotions you tied to them. A casual word may be forgotten instantly, but if it carried an insult or deep love, it is etched forever. Emotion is the ink that stamps images into the subconscious. A thought without emotion is like a pencil sketch on scrap paper. A thought with strong emotion is a blueprint sealed in red ink sent straight down to the production floor. Then comes belief. This is the crucial point. You may give attention, you may add emotion, but without belief, the mental factory does not receive a complete order. Belief is the signature of confirmation, turning the blueprint into an official request. You may repeat positive affirmations endlessly, but if deep inside you still doubt, the effect is only partial. Conversely, if you firmly believe in something, even if it is just a fleeting thought, it carries immense power. Belief is the foundation upon which the whole structure is built. When the three elements converge, attention, emotion, and belief, a mental image becomes the mold that the subconscious faithfully reproduces in your life. It does not require long stretches of time nor elaborate rituals. It only requires steady repetition or a single moment of intense emotion and belief. This is why one traumatic shock can alter destiny, because it combines all three factors at high intensity. And it is also why a powerful desire can carry you to results that others consider impossible. Imagine a person who continually thinks of failure. He pays attention to risk, he feels fear, and he believes he cannot overcome it. The formula instantly imprints the blueprint of failure into his subconscious, and the subconscious, faithful beyond measure, organizes opportunities, decisions, and circumstances to match that blueprint. Conversely, someone who focuses on an image of success nurtures emotions of gratitude and excitement, and believes firmly that it already belongs to him, sends down an entirely different blueprint. And reality is compelled to shift, to reflect that belief. This is not daydreaming, it is the natural operation of consciousness. Everything around you, from work and relationships to health, is reflecting the blueprints you have sent down in the past. You may not recall each moment of attention, emotion, and belief you invested, but reality is the most vivid proof. It never errs, it never forgets. It only reflects exactly what has been ordered. This creative formula is both a challenge and a gift. A challenge because it reveals your responsibility. No more blaming fate, others, or circumstances. A gift because it places in your hands the key to mastery. You can change reality by changing the mental blueprint. You can exchange suffering for peace, lack for abundance, weakness for strength, simply by mastering and applying this formula. The wonder is that the formula does not demand perfection immediately. As long as you begin to direct attention to what is right, nurture positive emotions, and strengthen belief each day, gradually the mental factory will shift production. Like a large ship turning, it may be slow at first, but once redirected, the entire journey follows a new course. External reality sooner or later must change to align with the new blueprint. Many people ask, if this formula is precise, why do I still see so many things I do not want? Because they are unaware that even without conscious intention, they are still operating the formula. They focus on anxiety, they emotionalize it, and they deeply believe that something bad will happen. That too is applying the formula, but in a negative direction. The universe does not distinguish between what you want and what you don't. It only reflects the blueprint you send. What must be done is reversal. Instead of unconsciously producing unfavorable scenarios, you begin consciously planting worthy images. You practice placing attention on the good, stirring up positive emotion, and gradually strengthening belief that it is true. You become the conscious architect of reality instead of a passive victim of illusions. And once you are familiar with this formula, you realize everything can change because nothing is stronger than a mental blueprint sealed with attention, emotion, and belief. The creative formula never errs. It only waits for you to use it rightly. And once you do, your life is no longer a chain of random reactions, but a living testimony of mental power. That is the moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin affirming, "This is what I created, and I can create something better." From there, you enter a new era of yourself, an era of initiative, of creation, of freedom, and it all begins with mastering one simple yet eternal formula: attention, emotion, belief. There are truths that seem so simple that people easily overlook them. Yet it is precisely these simple truths that have the power to reshape an entire life. The affirmation, "God is love, and only love exists," is one such key. It is not a beautiful phrase, not a slogan meant to encourage the spirit, but a code that unlocks the door into another level of awareness. And the miracle is that to reach that level, you need only 7 consecutive days of steady practice. 7 days, a short span compared to a lifetime, but enough to create a turning point if you give yourself wholeheartedly. Because what you repeat each day becomes habit, habit becomes belief, and belief becomes reality. This 7-day transformation key is a real experiment, not based on distant philosophy, but on the law of how the mind operates. Whatever you continually sow into the subconscious becomes the blueprint of your life. The affirmation, "God is love, and only love exists," carries within it 3 layers of power. First, it affirms that the essence of God is absolute love. No mixture, no darkness, no judgment, only love. Second, it affirms that nothing exists outside of love. All that seems like hatred, division, or suffering is only a temporary absence where love has not yet been recognized. Third, it brings you into a state of alignment with that love, so that every thought, feeling, and reaction in you is reshaped according to the same frequency. The practice is profoundly simple in the morning upon waking at midday when the mind begins to tire, and at night before sleep close your eyes, breathe slowly, and repeat this affirmation silently or aloud. No need for elaborate visualization, no religious ritual required. Just allow this statement to flow into your awareness like a pure stream, washing away all dust. The 3 daily repetitions are not random. They are the 3 hinge moments of the mind, when it starts up, when it dips, and when it sinks into the deepest subconscious. On the first day, you may feel the statement is nothing more than words. The mind will resist presenting countless pieces of evidence: war, illness, betrayal, injustice. It will whisper, "How can you say only love exists when reality is filled with suffering?" Do not fight that reaction. Simply continue repeating. The goal is not to argue with the ego, but to plant a new seed deep in the soil of the subconscious. By the 3rd or 4th day, you may begin to notice a subtle shift. Situations that once made you tense suddenly feel lighter. People who once easily triggered your anger seem to affect you less, not because they have changed, but because your way of responding has. The affirmation begins to act as a new filter, altering how you see and how you feel. By the 5th day, something deeper emerges. You no longer just repeat the words, you begin to feel them. You sense that you are not merely affirming a philosophy, but touching a truth that has always been present. Every cell in you seems infused with a different current. Negative thoughts, once as familiar as breathing, no longer hold the same power. They appear and dissolve quickly, like darkness fleeing when light shines. On the 7th day, if you have remained steady, you enter a new state of awareness. The affirmation, "God is love and only love exists," is no longer an exercise but becomes the foundation of living. You no longer need to force repetition, for the mind has begun to operate automatically on this new axis. And when the subconscious changes, the whole experience changes. You begin to see love in others even when they do not yet know how to express it. You see hidden connection even within conflict. You see glimmers of light even in circumstances that seem hopeless. The mechanism of this transformation is not mystical magic but a psychological, spiritual law. The subconscious does not distinguish real from imagined, right from wrong. It only reflects what is repeated with emotion and belief. When you plant this affirmation in it for 7 consecutive days, you are rewriting your very source code. And from that source code, the entire software of your life runs on a new path, the path of love, peace, and abundance. You may ask, can just 7 days be enough to change a whole life? The answer is 7 days are the beginning, the first crack in the old wall. Once a crack appears, light seeps in. From there, the choice to maintain or expand is yours. But the power of the first 7 days must not be underestimated, for it awakens in you the direct experience that consciousness can shift and reality immediately responds. What matters most is consistency. Do not let the lazy mind convince you that skipping once is harmless. Each time you skip, the crack risks being sealed again. But if you remain firm, those 7 days become the foundation of a new life. And from then on, you no longer see this affirmation as an exercise, but as an eternal reminder: God is love, and only love exists. When you live from this foundation, you no longer ask, how do I fight darkness? You simply know, just let light appear. You no longer ask, how do I overcome hatred? You understand love has already been the foundation. I need only acknowledge it. You no longer ask, how do I escape suffering? You realize suffering is only illusion, and love is the unchanging reality. That is the power of the 7-day transformation key. It not only shifts emotions, it changes the very source code of awareness. And once awareness changes, life changes. Those 7 days can become the dividing line of your life before and after. Before you lived in fear, insecurity, and illusion. After you live in love, peace, and truth. And it all begins with a simple affirmation repeated faithfully: God is love, and only love exists. Every morning is a blank page. Before the outer world rushes in with news, work, responsibilities, and conversations, you have a golden moment, a silence where the mind is still soft and pliable. That moment lasts only a few minutes, but it is powerful enough to shape the entire day. If you know how to use it, you will not only create a different morning, but you can rewrite the entire trajectory of your life. That is why the practice of the 5-minute morning mental movie carries such profound, transformative power. A mental movie is the way you build a vivid, clear scene where what you desire is no longer in the future but has already become the present. You do not daydream that it will happen, you step directly into it is happening, and live in that scene as if the truth were already complete. This may seem like mere imagination, but in reality it is a method grounded in psychology and neuroscience. The brain does not distinguish between an actual experience and one vividly imagined with enough detail and emotion. It reacts to both in the same way heart rate shifts, hormones release, muscles adjust. This means that when you fully step into a mental scene, both body and subconscious believe it is reality. Imagine taking 5 minutes as soon as you wake up, before reaching for your phone, before letting the mind plunge into worries. You sit still, close your eyes, and begin playing a movie for yourself. In that movie, you are living the moment you desire, not as a distant vision, but as an event that has already happened, and you are now enjoying it. If your desire is health, see yourself strong, light, full of energy, moving freely with a smile. If your wish is prosperity, see yourself signing contracts, receiving good news, or simply living in the feeling of abundance and confidence. If you long for love, see yourself in warm embrace, understood, deeply connected. The key here is immersion. You do not stand outside watching yourself in the movie, you step in and live as the main character. You hear the sounds, smell the scents, feel the textures, and most importantly, you allow emotions to flood you. Feel joy, gratitude, fulfillment, as if all of it is happening right now, because it is precisely emotion that plugs the current into the mental image, turning it into a command for the subconscious. Without emotion, the movie is mere entertainment. With emotion, it becomes a creative blueprint. Many people live their entire lives unconsciously playing mental movies, but negative ones. Each morning as they open their eyes, they envision dreadful scenes, dead-end work conflicts awaiting sluggish health. They replay those scenes for hours in their minds, filled with anxiety, irritation, fear. And then, in accordance with the unchanging formula, the subconscious takes the order and turns that movie into lived experience. They do not realize they have directed a film of failure, playing it over and over until it becomes their fate. The 5-minute morning practice allows you to reclaim the role of director. Instead of letting negative scenes play automatically, you deliberately write the script. And when that script is repeated steadily, the subconscious begins to accept it as the official reality. It adjusts decisions, reactions, even biological mechanisms to align with the movie. You become more confident, You speak differently, act differently, notice opportunities you once overlooked. Others sense the new energy in you and respond in new ways. Everything seems to shift as life begins to rearrange itself to match the image you planted. Remember, the secret does not lie in desire, but in the feeling of already happened. When you affirm, "I will have," the subconscious understands that it is not here yet. But when you live as I have now, the subconscious records it as reality. And once the subconscious records it, the creative law cannot help but reflect it. That is why you must step into the movie each morning with all senses and emotions as one who has already achieved what you desire. You may wonder why only 5 minutes. Because the short duration makes it easier to sustain, and more importantly, quality is what matters. A sharp, detailed scene infused with emotion for 5 minutes is more powerful than hours of vague daydreaming. Furthermore, 5 minutes in the morning is when the subconscious door is wide open, not yet crowded with outside noise. It is the moment when seeds take root most easily. Think of the difference. One person begins the day by checking their phone drawn into negative news, comparing themselves to others carrying that energy all day. Another begins with 5 minutes of a mental movie, living in the feeling of success, abundance, love, peace. Who will step into the world with higher energy? Who will make wiser decisions? Who will notice more opportunities? The answer is obvious. What matters is repetition. Not just one morning, not 3 mornings, but habit. When the mental movie becomes habit, you are systematically reprogramming the nervous system and subconscious. At first it may feel forced, but after a few weeks you will notice the mind automatically returning to positive imagery, and then external reality has no choice but to mirror it. The 5-minute morning mental movie is not just a motivational exercise, but a comprehensive reprogramming tool. It shifts you from reactor to creator. It frees you from old patterns of thought, replacing them with new belief and emotion. And it gives you direct experience that the world is not something imposed upon you, but a mirror reflecting the mental images you have planted. Just 5 minutes each morning, but those 5 minutes carry the power to change every remaining hour of the day. And when day follows day, it changes your whole life. You no longer live in waiting, but in completed reality. No longer in vague hope, but in certain faith. No longer asking when, but affirming now. This is the art of living as if it has already happened. A 5-minute morning mental movie, if you truly immerse yourself, can become the greatest movie of your life, the one that the outer world must play back, scene by scene, detail by detail, exactly as the script you have written in your role. To mind. There is a truth few people realize: the human mind never stands still. It is always moving, always weaving images, always projecting an invisible movie in the background. And those very reels, whether you are aware of them or not, become the blueprints for your experience. Every joy, every fear, every success or failure begins with what you have imagined many times in silence. That is why the question, "What am I imagining right now?" is the crucial key to reclaiming mastery. Most people imagine unconsciously. They do not sit down to draw a vision, yet every moment the mind is still drawing. When you worry about an important appointment, you are imagining yourself failing. When you are angry about yesterday's argument, you are imagining every word again, even making it heavier. When you think of illness, you are imagining your body weakening. And since the subconscious does not distinguish between imagined and real, it accepts all those images as commands. The question, "What am I imagining right now?" has the power to awaken you instantly. It pulls you out of the unconscious machinery and forces you to look directly at the screen playing in your head. At times you may be startled. You are just playing a movie of failure, full of anxiety, more detailed than any cinema script. Realizing this is the first step toward change. Because you cannot edit a film you do not even realize you are watching. The interesting thing is that this question requires no lengthy answer. Simply posing it, you immediately see what you are picturing. Perhaps it is a scene of financial worry, or of imagining how others are judging you, or of painting before your eyes a disastrous future that has not yet come. And the moment you see it, you have the chance to change the movie. You can choose to shift toward imagining another vision where you walk with confidence, where you are welcomed, where everything ends in peace. Imagine the power of this if you practice daily. Instead of letting hundreds of negative movies run unchecked, you continually pause and ask. That question is like a flashlight shining onto the dark screen, exposing unconscious images and giving you the right to choose a new script. The more often you ask, the more awake you become. And the more awake you are, the less you allow unfavorable scripts to dominate your mind. In truth, everyone is living inside what they imagine most. Those who constantly fear the future will see that fear take shape. Those who are often grateful and imagine abundance will see opportunities appear continually. Those who plant images of love frequently in their minds find their lives filled with connection and compassion. This is not coincidence but law. The subconscious has no concept of play. It treats every repeated image as a production order. The question, "What am I imagining right now?" also works as a tool to anchor you in the present. Many think they live in the present, but in reality their minds constantly run to the past or leap into the future. They replay sad memories or project bleak scenarios ahead. When you ask this question, you force yourself to look at the movie currently playing in this very moment. And from there you can choose continue or stop, reinforce or change. What matters is not to treat negative imagining as a fault. Everyone at times envisions grim scenarios. The difference lies in whether you notice and redirect. This question is the channel switch. Once you are aware, you can turn the wheel. Instead of letting the ship race into the storm, you choose to steer toward the light. And this change, if maintained consistently, creates an entirely different life. You may find it hard to believe that one brief question could be enough to shift reality. But remember, life is not decided by rare grand moments, but by thousands of small moments each day. And in every one of those moments you are imagining something. If you are not aware, you let the unconscious plant the seeds. But if you are awake and ask, "What am I imagining right now?" you begin choosing the seeds yourself. When the question becomes habit, you find yourself reacting less on impulse. You no longer panic at bad news, no longer lash out when provoked, no longer brood when thinking of tomorrow, because you have learned to pause, notice the movie playing, and switch to a new scene. And that new scene, once nourished and repeated, becomes the life you actually experience. This does not turn you into a dreamer detached from reality. On the contrary, it makes you more lucid. You do not deny difficulties, but you refuse to spin them into endless reels in your head. You recognize that what is most vividly imagined has the greatest chance to manifest. Therefore, you choose to sow worthy images, scripts that reflect goodness and love. And then reality ceases to be a threat, becoming instead a mirror of what you have consciously planted. This key question can accompany you anywhere, anytime. At work, on the road, in conversation, even just before sleep. Each time you ask, you pull yourself back to center. And from that center, you can reset the direction of the whole day, the whole life. A small shift, yet spreading outward like ripples on water. So let this question become your companion. Simple, concise, yet powerful. Because every time you ask yourself, "What am I imagining right now?" you are reminding yourself that you are the director of your life's movie, not a helpless spectator. And once you remember that, often enough, you will no longer live in the old script, but begin writing a new one, the script of light, peace, and love. The root of all suffering lies in a false belief, the belief that we are separate. Separate from the source, separate from others, separate from the goodness inherent within ourselves. From this illusion of separation, humans see life as a battlefield, where we must compete, compare, and struggle to survive. Once convinced that we are alone, we automatically build walls of defense, shielding and resisting. But the more walls we raise, the farther we move from the truth. There has never been separation, only union. Christ consciousness is the key to stepping out of this illusion. It is not a religion, not a creed, but a state of awareness. In this state, we cease to see life through the lens of opposition, good versus evil, self versus others, gain versus loss. We begin to perceive the single flow of love, order, and life running through everything. In that moment, the one we label as enemy appears as a mirror reflecting the unhealed parts within us. The problem we once thought opposed us turns out to be an opportunity to broaden our vision, and the fear that once weighed heavily suddenly dissolves in the light of union. What makes Christ consciousness distinct is the complete transformation in the way we respond. Those who live in separation react with defensiveness, suspicion, resistance. Those who live in union respond with understanding, patience, love. Not because they are naive, but because they see deeper. They see that beneath all differences in form is the same stream of life, the same origin. And when that is seen, there is no reason left to fight. Everything becomes an opportunity for love to be expressed more fully. Recall times when you felt offended. Instinctively, you shrank, erected barriers, wanted to retaliate. That is the reaction of separated consciousness. But if you pause, look deeper, and realize the other person is also hurting, also driven by fear and the absence of love. Instead of hostility, a wave of compassion can arise within you. And in that moment you step from separation into union. You no longer react from the wound, but from love. And within that energy, the situation transforms even before a word is spoken. Christ consciousness also changes the way we see ourselves. In separation, we condemn ourselves. I am not good enough. I am flawed. I am guilty. These judgments become chains, making us afraid of our own being. But in union, we realize we have always been part of absolute goodness. Mistakes are only shadows, unable to touch the essence. And then forgiveness ceases to be something we strive for. It becomes as natural as breath. We forgive ourselves and we forgive others because we see clearly that all are but different expressions of one life stream. Stepping into Christ consciousness does not mean avoiding life. On the contrary, it allows us to live more fully. At work, we are no longer haunted by competition, but see the opportunity to create value together. In family, we no longer strive to win or lose, but listen to understand. In the turbulence of society, we are not swept into cycles of hatred, but maintain clarity to act from love. And this very attitude exerts a powerful influence, because the energy of union always radiates far more strongly than the energy of separation. You may think, do I have the strength to maintain such a state when life is constantly colliding with me? The answer lies in practice. Each time you face a challenge, ask yourself, am I seeing from the consciousness of separation or the consciousness of union? Am I reacting from fear, or am I choosing to act from love? With just that question, you begin to change direction, and with every shift you strengthen the habit of living from union. Like muscles trained through exercise, Christ consciousness grows stronger through each choice. Imagine if one day you lived entirely from union. Every relationship would feel lighter. Every difficulty would become an opportunity to grow. Every conflict would turn into a lesson to expand the heart. You would no longer feel lost in a hostile world, but feel yourself immersed in a current of love embracing all. And that very feeling would be living proof that you have stepped from separation into union. The essential point is this: union is not something you need to seek outside. It has always been within you. Christ consciousness has never left you. It has only been forgotten, covered by layers of anxiety, fear, judgment. When you brush those layers aside, union reveals itself as clearly as the sun that has always been there, only hidden by clouds. And the moment you remember, you are free. Living in union does not make you detached from the world. It makes you a bearer of light. Others may not yet see, but they feel the peace within you. They may not understand why, but they know they feel safer near you. That is the natural influence of Christ consciousness. It does not need proof, does not need preaching, only presence. From separation to union is the greatest journey of human life. It not only changes the way you think, but changes the way you exist. It not only frees you from fear, but makes you a fountain of love for those around you. And when that happens, you realize the kingdom of life is not a distant place, but right here in every moment you choose to see with Christ consciousness. That is the turning point. From a wanderer lost in the desert of separation, you become a citizen of union. And from that place you see life with new eyes, live with an open heart, and know with certainty one thing: there has never been division, only the boundless love that connects all. If there is one habit that silently drains the most energy from human beings, it is judgment. Judgment of others, judgment of situations, and especially judgment of ourselves. We believe judgment is a form of self-defense, a way to control circumstances. But in truth, judgment only creates interference. It is like constant static in an electrical system, blocking the subtle signals that arise from the deeper layers of awareness. And only when you try living a day without judgment do you realize the lucid silence that has been waiting within you all along, that is the channel of intuition. The 24-hour no-judgment mode is not a game, nor a test of morality. It is an exercise that reprograms the way your mind operates. Imagine for one full day you decide not to allow any critical, condemning, or comparative thought to take root in your head. When someone arrives late, you do not think this person is irresponsible. You simply observe the event without attaching a label. When you hear unfavorable news, you do not instantly conclude bad or terrible, but quietly let the information pass without adding emotional color. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you do not scold imperfections, but simply acknowledge your body as its island. At first, you may find it nearly impossible. because judgment has become such a deeply ingrained habit, operating as naturally as breathing. You will be surprised to see how much you actually judge, from today's weather to the appearance of a passerby to every small mistake of your own. But do not be discouraged. Realizing this is the first step of awakening. Each time you catch a judgmental thought, simply pause, smile, and replace it with a silent blessing. For example, instead of "this person is so annoying," shift it to "may this person be at peace." You will see that every time you replace judgment with blessing, your inner being brightens a little. Gradually, the noise in your mind lessens, and within that quiet, intuition begins to speak. Intuition never disappears, but it speaks with a voice that is very soft, very subtle. When the mind is clouded with endless judgment, you cannot hear it. But when the current of judgment ceases, intuition rises clearly like a fresh stream after the rain. Intuition is completely different from impulsive reaction. Reaction is the product of habit, old memories, fear. Intuition is a knowing from the depths, requiring no reasoning yet precise. You have experienced it before, when you suddenly knew you had to call someone, and at that very moment they needed you. When you felt you should turn a different way and avoided an accident. When you could not explain but sensed deeply that a decision was right. Intuition is always present, but you connect with it only when you stop judging. A day without judgment is like a cleansing. It purifies the atmosphere of the inner world, helping you breathe more freely, think more clearly. When you stop labeling events, you begin to see truth as it is, without the fog of emotions. And truth is often simpler than we think. A person arriving late is just a person arriving late, nothing more or less. A sudden rain is just a rain. A mistake at work is simply an event to learn from. When you remove judgment, everything feels lighter, and you release vast amounts of energy once trapped in negative reactions. More interestingly, that freed energy is transformed into sensitivity. You begin to feel the signals from your body more clearly, a hunch, a gentle nudge, a calm assurance that cannot be explained. You hear more clearly the inner voice, not the voice of criticism, but the voice of guidance, encouragement, direction. That is the channel of intuition, the channel that always knows what is best for you, what aligns most with your path. During those 24 hours, you may face many temptations to return to old habits. But remember, no judgment does not mean you become passive, unable to discern right from wrong. It only means you do not let the mind spiral into condemnation. You can still act decisively, still choose, but you do so from clarity rather than emotional reaction. And it is precisely that clarity that gives your decisions harmonious energy, producing better outcomes. After completing 24 hours without judgment, you will notice a striking change. Your inner world feels calmer, lighter, and you sense a freedom you never knew you lacked. You realize you do not need to label everything, do not need to fight every little thing. And most importantly, you realize intuition, the guiding channel long buried, has opened again. Imagine extending this practice beyond one day, into many days. Your intuition would grow so keen, it would be almost impossible to err. You would walk guided from within, instead of being swept away by chaotic emotions. You would see your choices align mysteriously, yet precisely with life's flow. And you would understand this is not magic, but the natural result when the mind ceases judgment and becomes clear. The 24-hour no-judgment mode may be a challenge, but it is also a gift. It gives you the direct experience of inner freedom, opening the door for intuition, the silent teacher, to step forth. And from that day on, you will know how to live with less noise, more light, and a certainty that arises from the deepest part of yourself. There are those who pray, endlessly read without pause, seek every piece of advice from outside, yet still feel stuck. Not because they lack effort, but because they have not learned how to listen. Their minds are filled with noise, comparisons, analyses, opinions, judgments. In that cacophony, the whisper of guidance cannot break through, for guidance never shouts. It comes in silence. It requires that you create space for it to resound. And the art of hearing guidance begins with entering inner silence. Inner silence is not merely the absence of outer words, but the stopping of the endless inner monologue. You may be in a quiet place, but if your mind is still constantly commenting, "Am I doing well or poorly? What do they think of me?" you are still noisy. True silence comes when you release all evaluations. Do not run back to the past. Do not leap into the future, but exist wholly in the moment. In that state, there is an openness, and in that openness, guidance appears. Guidance does not always come as clear words. Sometimes it is a gentle nudge, Sometimes it is an unexplainable peace when you choose a direction. Sometimes it is a sudden thought simple and clearer than anything you could analyze. But to recognize these signals, you need quiet. The noise of judgment, fear, and comparison hides them. When you practice living in silence, you discover truth has always been there. You simply could not hear it because you were too busy with the noise. The strange thing is that inner silence is not a frightening emptiness. On the contrary, it is full of life. It is like a still lake reflecting the entire sky. When the mind is still, you reflect the boundless wisdom already within. From there you begin to discern what is the echo of fear and what is the prompting of intuition. A person who lives in silence is not easily swept up by the panic around them. They become an anchor of peace amidst storms because they hear the current deeper than all turmoil. Many fear silence because they are accustomed to the constant activity of the mind. When it quiets, they feel empty, uneasy. But in truth, that is only the dust of fear surfacing. If they dare to remain to pass through those first uncomfortable minutes, they will touch a deeper layer, the calm peace that has always been there. Practicing inner silence is like digging a well. At first you only see dry, barren soil, but dig deeper and you find an underground stream. And once you touch that water, you cannot forget it. There are many ways to enter inner silence. One of the simplest is to observe the breath. Each time the mind wanders, you bring attention back to the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling. Breath is the cord that ties you back to the present. Gradually, the inner noise lessens, giving way to stillness. Another way is to observe thoughts without attaching to them. Picture each thought as a cloud drifting across the sky. You do not need to chase it away nor cling to it, only watch. When you no longer identify with thoughts, they lose their power, and silence opens. In that silence you realize something extraordinary. Guidance does not come from outside, but from your own center. No one can know your path better than the life flowing through you. Others may advise, books may instruct, but only when you listen in silence can you distinguish which voice is truly meant for you. And when you act from that guidance, you find doors opening naturally, uncanny coincidences appearing as if the entire universe were cooperating with you. Inner silence is also medicine for the body. For much of stress and illness arises from chaotic thinking. When you quiet that noise, the body rests. The nervous system returns to balance. The heartbeat slows, calming hormones are released. Just a few minutes of silence each day gives the body a chance to renew. More importantly, it reminds you that you are not merely streams of thought, but the vast stillness that contains them all. You can practice this even amid busyness. While walking down a noisy street, be silent inside. During conversation, hold a small pocket of stillness in the heart, not swept entirely into words. At work, pause for a few seconds, breathe deeply, and let the mind settle. These silent moments, however brief, gradually open a new channel, the direct connection to guidance from the depths. Living in inner silence does not make you withdraw from the world. On the contrary, it makes you more present. You hear others more clearly because you are no longer busy judging them in your mind. You work more effectively because you are not scattered by worry. You love more deeply because the heart is no longer covered by noise. And you decide more wisely because you hear the voice of infinite wisdom. The art of hearing guidance ultimately is not about learning something new, but daring to let go of the old noise. When you stop letting yourself be ruled by judgment, comparison, fear, stillness unfolds. And in that stillness you discover what was never absent, a gentle, accurate guidance always patiently waiting for you to listen. It is a voice that never errs because it does not come from the small ego, but from the unified foundation of life itself. Inner silence is not a luxury for monks or mystics. It is a basic need for anyone who wants to live fully, to hear truth instead of illusion, to be guided by deeper wisdom instead of dragged by fear. And once you taste that silence, you will never want to return to the noisy life before, because you know only in silence can you truly hear the guidance meant for your soul. The body is not a mute block of matter existing only to carry the soul through life. It is a sophisticated system, a living orchestra in which every cell listens, responds, and remembers. What few realize is that the body listens not only to the food you take in, not only to the air you breathe, but also to the words you whisper in your mind, the declarations you speak each day. Every thought, every word becomes a signal sent to every cell, and for that reason you can choose to be the conductor communicating with your body in the language of love and truth, reprogramming it to function in harmony, health, and light. One of the most powerful ways to do this is by declaring before a mirror, When you stand before the mirror, your eyes meeting your own, it is no longer an outward action. It is a dialogue between consciousness and the subconscious, between soul and body. Every word you utter in that moment goes straight to the deepest level, because the mirror reflects not only your image but amplifies the power of words. In that reflection you are both the speaker and the listener, and the entire body is listening. Imagine in the morning looking straight into your eyes and declaring, "This body is the expression of divine life. Every cell is full of vitality, brimming with love and harmony." When you say it, do not just recite mechanically, but feel each word flowing into every vein. You will notice your chest expanding, your shoulders relaxing, your breath deepening. That is the body responding. It does not resist, it does not doubt, it receives like a child hearing the gentle voice of a parent. Many people stand before the mirror only to inspect flaws, wrinkles, scars, signs of aging, and they utter words of reproach. "I look awful, I'm already old, I'm not attractive anymore." They do not realize that each of those statements is like a negative command sent directly to the cells, and the body, loyal to the utmost, obeys. Cells hear old, they begin to weaken. Cells hear tired, they slow their regeneration. It is no coincidence that many feel their decline accelerate after repeating self-criticism daily. On the other hand, when you change the message, the body changes its rhythm. Tell it that it is beautiful, strong, full of vitality, and gradually it begins to operate according to that rhythm. This is not blind positive thinking, but the science of communication between consciousness and cells. Studies have shown that the mind directly influences the immune system, heart rate, nervous system. Affirmations do not remain on the surface of psychology. They truly alter the chemistry of the body. See the cells as workers needing clear instruction. If you constantly scold, they lose spirit and work chaotically. If you neglect them, they continue with old habits, stagnant and unchanged. But if you encourage praise and guide them with love, they work eagerly, creatively and effectively. Your body is the same. It is not inert. It is listening every day, every hour. A practice you can do every morning. Stand before the mirror, gaze deeply into your own eyes, breathe in slowly, and affirm, "I am grateful for this body. It is the temple of life." Every cell is healthy, intelligent, and cooperating perfectly. Repeat 3 times each time, letting the words flow as though you are giving your body a loving command. When you do this for 7 days, you will feel the difference. Not only does your mood change, but energy truly shifts. The body responds with renewed vitality, like a garden receiving rain after drought. What matters most is consistency. Do not expect instant results and then quit. Remember, the body is a system that has memorized old habits for many years. It takes time for new messages to penetrate and replace the old program. But once reprogramming begins, change accelerates. And once the body begins to believe your words, it will work for you, not against you. Beyond mirror declarations, practice speaking with your body throughout the day. When you feel tired, instead of sighing, "I'm exhausted," place your hand on your chest and whisper, "Body, thank you for serving me. Rest and renew." When you feel pain somewhere, instead of complaining, say, "This place is healing. I send love to every cell." It may sound simple, but you will be surprised to see the body recover faster, for it always responds to the vibration of love and gratitude. The body is also your most faithful companion. Even when you have criticized or neglected it, it has tirelessly worked for you. The heart still beats, the lungs still breathe, the liver and kidneys still filter, billions of cells still regenerate. When you begin to respond with love and affirmations, that relationship is healed. You are no longer a harsh master, but a companion to the body. From there, health ceases to be a battle and becomes resonance. This has another subtle effect. When you communicate with your body in the language of love, your mind is healed as well. You no longer live in shame about appearance, age, or limitation. You see the body as a wonder to be grateful for, instead of a burden to fix. And when this attitude takes root, you naturally radiate confidence, attractiveness, and peace. Others sense that energy even before hearing a word from you. Communicating with the body is not superstition. It is the wisdom of knowing that consciousness and matter are not separate. Every cell carries intelligence listening to you every day. You can send them reproach and receive fatigue, or you can send them loving declarations and receive overflowing vitality. The choice is yours starting from this moment. Mirror declarations and cell reprogramming do not require much time nor elaborate ritual. They only require sincerity, consistency, and a little courage to look directly at yourself and say, "What you once forgot, you are the embodiment of divine life. and this body is your most faithful companion. Tell it so, and you will see the miracle unfold not from outside, but from within every cell of your being. In every spiritual tradition, human beings have sought shelter from the turbulence of life. But true protection does not come from thick walls, from weapons, or from outward defenses. It comes from consciousness. When the mind rests fully in union with the source of good, a protective field is naturally established. This field is not a material armor, but a subtle vibration, making you no longer resonate with negative waves, and therefore they cannot touch you. And Psalm 91 is the doorway into that protective field when read not as a plea but as a decree. Many are accustomed to reading Psalm 91 as a cry for help. They recite it with hope of being protected from danger, disease, or enemies. But when approached this way, you unintentionally place yourself in a position of weakness, as though you are waiting for pity from an outside power. In truth, Psalm 91 was not written to stir up begging, but to remind you of a reality already present. That reality is that you are living in the absolute safety of the source. When you declare it as a decree, you are not asking, you are affirming. Remember the verse, "You shall not fear the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day." This does not tell you to hope fear will vanish, but affirms that in the protective field of consciousness, fear has no right to touch you. This is not comfort, but a vibrational law. Consciousness united with love no longer resonates with the frequency of dread. Therefore, fear dissolves not because you conquered it, but because it cannot find a foothold. When you read Psalm 91 as a decree, each word becomes a command sent into the subconscious. You do not say, "Please shield me," but declare, "I am covered." You do not say, "Please keep me from the plague," but affirm, "The plague cannot come near me." The difference lies in the state of consciousness. One arises from fear and hope, the other radiates from certainty and authority. And the subconscious, the most loyal worker, always responds more powerfully to conviction than to vague hope. The protective field of consciousness does not function by driving away external conditions. It functions by raising your vibrational frequency. Like radio waves, when you tune into the frequency of light and love, you no longer hear the broadcast of fear and chaos. Not because that station vanished, but because it no longer matches you. This explains why some people seem always to avoid accidents, to remain calm amid storms. They are not luckier, they simply live in the protective field created by unified consciousness. Practicing Psalm 91 as a decree is also a process of reprogramming. Each day, as you read with absolute conviction, you are rewriting the operating software of the subconscious. You are teaching the body to believe in safety, teaching the heart to trust in peace, teaching the mind to stop identifying with fear. Repeated often, you begin to see clear changes: deeper sleep, steadier breathing, calmer reactions to events. And these small signs prove that the protective field has begun to activate. Some may ask, "But the world is full of dangers. Can one psalm truly protect me?" The answer is not the psalm itself, but the consciousness you establish through it. Psalm 91 is like a code, a structure of words designed to awaken the deep memory in your soul. When you read it as decree, you activate that code. And this activation opens a resilient energy field where negativity loses access. Imagine your body as a city. When you read Psalm 91 with faith, you switch on a system of light covering that city. In the light, intruders cannot hide. In the light, the ghosts of fear, disease, and misfortune have no place. You do not need to patrol every corner, you only need to keep the light shining, and the decree is the switch. What matters most is attitude. If you read in a spirit of pleading, you send out the signal of lack. But if you read in a spirit of declaration, you send out the signal of authority. That difference determines whether the protective field is activated or not. Therefore, read with certainty as if you are announcing an undeniable truth. Each word, each verse is a hammer breaking through layers of doubt until you feel clearly the safety surrounding you. The protective field of consciousness not only shields you from external misfortunes, but also from the inner assaults of anxiety, guilt, and self-condemnation. When you establish the decree daily, negative thought streams lose their grip. You no longer get swept into the whirlpool of news, no longer sink into obsessions. Instead, a steady peace gradually becomes the default state. And from that peace, intuition, health, and clarity flow abundantly. Psalm 91, as decree, is a reminder that you need not search outside for protection. It is already within you in the depths of consciousness. You need only activate it. Each time you declare, you weave another layer into the shield, like stitching an invisible garment that allows you to walk through life with unshakable safety. And when you live within that field, you are not only protected, you also become a light for others, a living testimony that true peace does not come from the world, but from consciousness united with the source. The world constantly makes people believe that financial security comes from the numbers in their bank account, from real estate, from investments, or from a steady income. But if you observe carefully, you will see that all of those things change. Markets rise and fall, currencies lose value, jobs can end suddenly. What you hold today may vanish tomorrow. If your security is based on those things, then instability is inevitable. To be truly free, you must place your trust in a source that cannot run dry, the source we call invisible gold. Invisible gold is not a precious metal hidden in the earth, but a stream of energy, a stream of consciousness, a stream of life that sustains everything that exists. It is not kept in the vaults of banks, nor does it depend on the global economy. It is the foundation of all provision, an endless flow always present, waiting for you to open yourself to receive it. When your consciousness unites with this invisible gold, you step out of the cycle of financial fear and live in the natural circulation of prosperity. Look closely. Every leaf, every drop of rain, every grain of rice does not appear because of human calculation, but from the invisible supply of the universe. The earth does not worry about lacking fertility. The sky does not worry about lacking light. The river does not worry about lacking water. Only human beings, because they believe in limitation, bind themselves with financial anxiety. They think wealth comes from struggle, from hoarding, from fierce competition. But in truth, all material things are merely forms of a spiritual reality. When your consciousness is fixed on invisible abundance, material wealth naturally comes without force, without panic. The core truth is, this money is only a symbol. The bill in your hand has no real value beyond the trust people place in it. Gold and silver are merely metals given meaning. The real source of supply is not paper or numbers, but the hidden abundance of consciousness within you. When you align yourself with that abundance, you send out a signal: I am enough, I am safe, I am connected to the endless source. And the universe, unfailingly loyal, will reflect that signal back to you in the form of opportunities, resources, and unexpected doors opening. On the contrary, when you live in fear of lack, you send out the opposite signal: I don't have, I need, I lack. And the universe, just as loyal, reflects it back exactly. You encounter more bills, more obstacles, more feelings of scarcity, not because the universe punishes you, but because you have chosen to align with the frequency of shortage. Invisible gold never disappears, but you have closed your heart to it. One way to connect with the invisible supply is to change the way you view money. Each time you hold a bill, do not think it is too little, or it will run out. See it as a symbol of the endless flow. Whisper to yourself, this money is only a drop in the infinite ocean, and I am in that ocean. The feeling changes instantly. From clenching tightly, you feel lighter, and you are ready to let the flow continue. Another practice is to give thanks even for your expenses. When you pay a bill, instead of frowning with regret, whisper, I am grateful that I have enough to pay this, and I know the supply is flowing even more. Gratitude opens the door for the flow of invisible gold to continue. Complaints and fear close it tightly. Many people ask, if everything already exists in the invisible supply, why do I still face difficulties? The simple answer: because your faith is still in limitation. You believe only your job supports you, only the market determines your wealth. You forget that your job, the market, or any channel is merely a tool. The true source is the invisible stream. When you shift your trust away from the tool and place it fully in the source, the tools arrange themselves. You may keep your current job, but it becomes more stable. You may lose one stream of income, but another will appear. When you live in the consciousness of supply, you no longer fear external change. Invisible gold also does not flow to those who see it as the goal, but to those who see it as a means to serve life. If you desire money only to satisfy selfish ego, you will always feel lack, because greed has no bottom. But if you see money as a tool to express love, to create value, to share, the flow opens wide. The universe is never stingy with those who use wealth as a channel for love and creativity. Remember, abundance does not come from exhausting effort, but from the vibration you emit. Some work little yet live in plenty because they trust in invisible gold. Some work endlessly yet struggle because they lock their minds into scarcity. It is not the job that determines wealth, but the inner consciousness. When you change consciousness, every external channel of supply changes accordingly. You do not need to persuade the universe to provide. The universe is already ready. Your task is to open yourself to receive through faith. And faith is not vague hope, but certainty cultivated in every thought, every word, every action. Each time you choose gratitude over complaint, you affirm faith. Each time you choose sharing over selfish hoarding, you strengthen faith. And that faith is the signal that connects you with invisible gold. When you live in the consciousness of supply, you enter a state of complete freedom. You work no longer to survive, but to express talent. You spend not out of fear, but out of joy. You invest not from anxiety, but from clarity. And you know for sure one thing: no matter how the world shifts, the supply never ceases to flow because you are in harmony with the pulse of eternal life. Invisible gold is always there in every breath, in every heartbeat, in every ray of sunlight. When you open your eyes to see it and live in it, you discover that finances are no longer a struggle but a gentle flow. And from that day on, you understand that true wealth is not in numbers but in consciousness, the consciousness that you are always sustained by an endless source that can never run dry. In the material world, a check is a promise. The one who signs the check declares, "I have enough in my account, and I commit to transferring this sum to you." When you hold that check, even before you hold the cash, you already believe that the value will come. You bring that piece of paper to the bank with unwavering trust that within minutes the numbers on it will become reality. So why, when it comes to supply from the universe, do you doubt? If your invisible account, the source of life, prosperity, love, and health, is unlimited, then the spiritual check exercise is simply the act of affirming. You know you already have, you know you are provided for, and you accept to receive. This is not a game of fantasy. It is a consciousness training tool teaching you to believe in the unseen, just as you believe in a paper check in everyday life. Writing a spiritual check is a simple yet profound process. You prepare a piece of paper, write down the sum or the thing you wish to receive, not from any specific source, but from the infinite supply or the source of all life. You sign your name at the bottom as though confirming a transaction between you and the universe. Most important, you must feel that this has already been approved, already released, even if it has not yet appeared in the physical. This is where the exercise becomes powerful. It forces you to stand in the position of someone who has already received, rather than someone still waiting. And when you stand there in the level of consciousness of completion, you begin to emit a vibration matching what you desire. And like every vibration, the universe responds not to your words, but to the frequency you emit. Many people write their spiritual check, and then a few hours later secretly doubt, will it work? Am I just imagining this? But doubt is a sign that you are still placing faith in limitation. Remember, the invisible account is not held in a bank, does not depend on a job or on others. It is the expression of a law, the law that consciousness takes form. And if you live as though what you desire has already been sent and will arrive in due time, you are living in the true stream of supply. One of the strongest ways to reinforce this exercise is to place your spiritual check somewhere you can see every day. Not so you count the days in waiting, but to remind yourself that you have activated the flow. You can stick it behind your mirror so that every morning when you see yourself, you whisper, "I am not asking, I am affirming." Supply has already begun to operate. This act, small but powerful, plows a new furrow in consciousness so that you are no longer a beggar but an heir. A little-known secret: the purpose of the exercise is not whether you receive the exact amount, the exact item, or the exact outcome. The purpose is that you are reprogrammed to trust in the inner power. If done correctly, even if that specific thing does not arrive, you will find yourself calmer, more confident, more clear, and that is the proof that the stream of supply has opened. When your inner world changes, the outer world is only the inevitable result. At times, what you wrote on the check will not arrive in the form you imagined, but it always comes in the way you need. You may write a check for 100 million, but instead of winning the lottery, you are given a new job, a project bringing steady income or timely support from someone. The question is not how will it come, but are you ready to receive? Writing a spiritual check is not a trick to force the universe to obey your will. It is an act of trust. You do not need to prove you are worthy because you already are part of life, and all life has the right to receive. You do not need to beg because supply is never lacking. The only thing you must do is shift your consciousness out of the realm of lack and into the realm of sufficiency. One of the subtlest aspects of this exercise is that it helps you recalibrate the concept of value. When you write a number, you are asking yourself, do I believe I am worthy of this? If there is hesitation, that is the level of limitation you need to transform. It is not the universe blocking you, but the old layer of belief shutting the door. And if you recognize this, do not be discouraged. Write another check, not only with a number, but with stronger confidence, deeper faith, clearer imagery. Repeat the act, not because the last one did not work, but because each time you write, you retrain your belief, elevate your level of consciousness, and expand your capacity to receive. The spiritual check exercise is not limited to money. You can write one for health, for a fulfilling relationship, for creativity, for a new turning point. The key is not the content on the paper, but the state you enter when writing it. If you write from gratitude, from certainty, from harmony with supply, then what you write has already begun to take shape from the very first moment. With consistent practice, you will discover something remarkable. You no longer worry about what you lack because your consciousness has shifted into the state of already having. And this very change is the seed from which everything you once longed for will sprout. Not because you are better, but because you have stopped doubting. Not because the universe has changed, but because you have believed. Placing trust in supply is the act of one who lives in faith, not in doubt. Writing a spiritual check is your way of signing a contract with yourself that you are already enough, already loved, already ready to receive. And when you live as if that is true, it will become true. Not by luck, but by the law of consciousness, a law that never fails. Money is neither good nor bad. It is neither sacred nor dirty. It does not bless, nor does it curse. Money is energy, one form of neutral energy without inherent nature, yet with the ability to magnify the nature of the one who uses it. In the hands of a conscious mind, money becomes an instrument of love. In the hands of an anxious mind, money becomes a burden. It does not create character, it reflects character. Yet humanity has layered money with countless emotions. Some crave it as though it were the source of life. Some fear it as though it were temptation. Some see it as the measure of self-worth. Others pretend to despise it as though the more they hate money, the nobler they are. Both extremes are wrong, for both are forms of dependence. A truly free person is one who can hold money without trembling, let go of it without regret, share it without calculation, and receive it without guilt. To have a healthy relationship with wealth, you must first strip away prejudice. Money does not come from evil. Money is not opposed to spirituality. Money does not make people worse. It is the immature consciousness that does that. If you are someone with a clear heart, then money in your hands will shine as light. If you live from the vibration of love, then every coin you use becomes a seed of peace. Money is a tool like electricity, like fire, like the internet. You can use it to heal or to harm, but you cannot blame the tool. Just as no one blames electricity because someone used it for an electric chair, the problem is not in the energy, but in the level of consciousness operating it. If you live in fear, you will use money to control. If you live in peace, you will use money to expand. It is time to free the mind from its obsession with money. Do not idolize it. Do not demonize it. See it as air necessary but not worthy of worship. Learn to breathe without clinging to each breath. When you are no longer attached, you allow the flow of money to circulate like water. And where there is natural flow, there is life, prosperity, and freedom. A healthy relationship with money begins within. Ask yourself, what do I think each time I see a bill? How do I feel when others are wealthy? How do I react when spending money on myself? The answers reveal the core beliefs running your inner financial system. If you feel anxious, guilty, or regretful each time you spend, that is a sign you live in a consciousness of lack. Conversely, if you are grateful for having enough to pay, if you feel joy when investing in yourself, if you silently bless those who are wealthy, then you are within the vibration of abundance. And when you are in that vibration, money ceases to be an obsession, becoming instead a natural flow. Practice speaking to money as you would to a friend, not with mystical words, but with attitude. When you hold money in your hand, smile and think, "Thank you for coming. I will use you to create value, to share, to live better." When you pay, send with it a blessing. May you continue to circulate and bring blessings to others. The way you treat money determines how money treats you. A common mistake is believing that the more spiritual you are, the poorer you must be. But poverty is not holiness. Poverty does not make anyone more spiritual. Poverty is simply a state, and if it comes with shame, fear, or resentment, it has nothing noble in it. By contrast, one who is materially abundant yet remains humble, grateful, and pure of heart, that is the true sign of harmony between life and spirit. A healthy relationship with money is also a test of inner freedom. If you cannot refuse a wrongful gain because you fear losing opportunity, you are not free. If you cannot share when you have enough because you fear future lack, you are not free. If you cannot accept a gift because you feel unworthy, you are not free. Freedom does not lie in the balance of your account, but in the lightness of heart in every decision related to money. Remember, money only magnifies who you already are. If you are generous, money helps you become more generous. If you are selfish, money only makes that clearer. Therefore, if you want to change your relationship with money, do not chase it. Turn inward and change yourself. When you become a clear channel, money will come not because you need it, but because you are ready to steward and operate it wisely. Finally, live as though money is a companion, not a master, not a servant. Let it come and go naturally without clinging, without pushing away. Free consciousness. Learn to thank each
No
coin
energy
that
is ever
arrives
wasted
and bless
in the
each coin
universe.
that leaves. Every thought,
When you have
every
a healthy
emotion, every
relationship
memory,
with wealth,
even the
money no
fleeting
longer
ones,
leaves an
controls
imprint
you,
in the
it
mental
serves you.
energy field
And you no
within
longer need to chase
What you have not
prosperity,
forgiven
for
does not
prosperity
disappear.
will walk with you.
It does
as a
not
loyal
dissolve
into nothingness. It is stored as a mental record in the deeper layers of your consciousness. And that record, if not released, becomes an invisible weight that slows you down, causes pain, or mysteriously compels you to repeat old situations. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Forgiveness does not justify wrongdoing. Forgiveness does not require you to agree to trust again or to continue a broken relationship. Forgiveness is the act of releasing yourself from the chains of negative energy in which you have imprisoned yourself by holding on to resentment, hurt, or the thirst for justice. Forgiveness does not change the past. It changes the way the past operates in your present. Each time you think of someone and your heart tightens, each time an old memory makes your body tense, that is the sign that the mental record is being activated. You can ignore it, bury yourself in work, or distract yourself with entertainment, but that energy remains like background noise that distorts your frequency. And if you broadcast signals in distorted vibrations, you will attract experiences that are likewise distorted. Forgiveness does not come from reason. Reason can only analyze, justify, or continue to accuse. Forgiveness comes from a deeper level where you see the other not as the one who hurt you, but as a soul also lost. And it is only when you no longer identify yourself as the victim that you become truly free. This freedom is not given by anyone, nor can it be taken away. It is the result of an inner act that you yourself choose to carry out. The mental record does not only preserve those who hurt you, it also keeps all the accusations you have leveled against yourself. A wrong word, a poor choice, a missed opportunity, an unwise action. Many people easily forgive others but live their entire lives under the weight of guilt toward themselves. And that is one of the greatest leaks of energy. For you cannot love life if you are still silently hating yourself. I erase the old record. Therefore, forgiveness must begin again from a higher level of awareness. Place your hand on your heart. These words may seem light, but when repeated with focus, they begin to rewrite your inner program that was weak. The journey of forgiveness is not a single leap. It is a series of choices. Each day when old emotions rise, you can continue to resent or choose love. Each time memories return, you can continue to blame or choose to release. And each time you choose love, you erase another line from the old mental record. When that record grows light enough, your energy becomes clear, and reality begins to change its color. Forgiveness does not make you weak. Forgiveness is the highest expression of strength. Only those with steady inner strength dare to say, I no longer need to carry this wound. Forgiveness is not because the other deserves it, but because you deserve to be free. Your peace is more important than who is right and who is wrong. And only when you place peace above righteousness can you step out of the cycle of injury and reaction. At times, forgiveness must be carried out as a ritual, Write down the name of the person you need to forgive. Write down what hurt you. Write down the true emotions: anger, disappointment, betrayal. Then write one final line: I choose to forgive. I choose to release this energy into nothingness. I am free. Burn the paper or tear it into pieces in silence. This is not a psychological trick. It is a symbolic act marking the end. Sometimes the one you need to forgive has passed away or is no longer present in your life. But that does not matter. Forgiveness does not require their presence. Forgiveness is an inner process. And sometimes forgiveness is what you must offer to an older part of yourself, the child who was abandoned, the young person who made mistakes, or the old version of you who hurt others because they were not yet mature. Each part needs to be embraced again in the light of understanding and love. No one can erase your mental record except you. No one can release you from the weight of unhealed memories except yourself. Forgiveness is not a gift you grant others. Forgiveness is the gift you grant yourself. And when that gift is opened, it brings something more precious than anything else: lightness of heart, serenity, the return to your true self, whole, free, and filled with light. No problem is ever solved by staring at it. No dark room is ever illuminated by analyzing the darkness. The key does not lie in magnifying the problem, but in withdrawing your attention from it and directing the whole of your mind toward the light, the only place where the solution truly exists. This is the operating principle of the golden key, a method so strangely simple yet unimaginably powerful, because it strikes directly at the core of reality, the truth that consciousness is the cause of every manifestation. The golden key does not ask you to strain in combat. It does not require analysis, reasoning, or digging into root causes. It only asks one thing: stop thinking about the problem and begin turning your mind toward God. Not to beg, but to recognize that there is only one power operating throughout the universe, and that power is absolute good. When you set your mind upon that absolute good, you restore order within consciousness. And when order is re-established within the mind, order inevitably appears in circumstances. But why is something so simple so difficult? Because most people have been trained from childhood to believe that worrying means responsibility, that overthinking ensures the right action. Yet worry never changes outcomes, it only tangles your vibration. Overanalysis never creates solutions, it only traps you in the loop of control. Meanwhile, a single adjustment in the focus of attention begins to shift the frequency that carries your entire reality. Substitution: this is the hidden mechanism of the golden key. When you cease dwelling on what is wrong and begin contemplating the supreme right, you are substituting one low-frequency image with one of higher vibration. When you stop chewing over fear and replace it with the whispered words, "God is love," you are exchanging a negative field with a healing field. You do not need to fight the problem. You only need to substitute it with an image, to the ultimate affirmation. You are re-establishing the divine presence of your consciousness. The human mind, the golden key, does not change streams of thought at the same time. It changes you. You cannot worry and trust circumstances, adjust themselves to reflect and be grateful at once. Just as therefore, every time you direct attention to make it vanish, simple affirmation switch on the light, such as God is in the same way. When you stop pouring life into the problem and begin breathing within the presence of God, you have ignited a light that cannot be extinguished. In this way, the problem may not dissolve instantly, but it will lose its power to control you. And once you are no longer controlled by circumstances, circumstances themselves must change. Withdrawing attention from the problem does not mean denying reality. It is the higher act of awareness, acknowledging that what is happening has no authority to define who I am or how I will live. And the very moment you hold steady to that perspective, you are living from the inside out, not defined by appearances, but governing appearances through consciousness. Some may say, "But if I don't worry about the problem, how will I act correctly?" The answer is only when you rise above the waves of worry do you access a higher level of wisdom where actions arise not from reaction but from intuition. You will know what to do, what to say, where to go, whom to meet, not through planning but through listening within. And that listening can only happen in stillness, where the mind is no longer crowded with predictions or negative scenarios. The golden key is a practice, not a theory, not a vague belief. Each time you face what unsettles you, choose a phrase, God is peace, God is wisdom, God is my source, and silently repeat it. Do not force emotions. Do not strain to believe. Simply let that inner sound become the new background wave. Repeat. Persist. Expect nothing, and then something will shift within you gently, deeply, and irreversibly. The golden key is not only for crises. Use it daily. Use it when you wake. Use it while waiting. Use it whenever your mind begins to waver. Let it become your second breath, not so that you may avoid reality, but so that you may master reality from a higher plane. When the mind is trained to continually return to God, you become a clear channel, and through that channel light does its work. Finally, remember what you attend to expands. The issue is not in the circumstance, but in where you set the eyes of your spirit. If you keep gazing at the wound, you will forget who you are. But if you turn toward the light, even if at first it is only a faint glimmer, that light will spread, will strengthen, and in the end will consume all darkness. That is the power of the golden key, and it is always in your hands. When everything around you suddenly shakes, the first thing to lose control is not the situation, it is the mind. Bad news, a sudden pain, a phone call in the middle of the night. The body reacts. Inhale for 4 seconds. Breath quickens, hold for 4 seconds, and fear exhale for 4 seconds. In those very moments, what you need is not theory. Repeat. This not a long 4-4-4 rhythm does more than calm the body. A support strong enough to hold brainwaves back to a safe state. And sometimes all you do not need to understand why it works. Try stopping, you only need to practice and let the silence itself answer. At the same time, quietly whisper, God is here. I am safe. Or I rest in God. Or simply, I am not alone. Every word carries vibration, and that vibration begins to form a new field of energy around you, like an invisible blanket keeping the soul warm in the cold of crisis. Some ask, is that all? Just breathing and repeating a phrase. But remember, in the most panic-stricken moments, what else can you do? The mind cannot think, the hands tremble, reason flees. And that is precisely why you need something simple, compact, strong, an action that needs no explanation but can bring you back to center. Because in the middle of chaos, you do not need to control everything. You only need to keep the light within from going out, like a small candle, just enough not to be swallowed by the dark. And that light begins with a conscious breath. Not everyone remembers the method when crisis strikes. That is why practice in times of peace is crucial. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. A few minutes each day, so the body and mind remember the way home. So that when the moment comes, you do not need to search, you simply switch it back on like a reflex. And then something strange happens. As the breath steadies, emotions soften. The mantra is no longer words. It becomes reality. You begin to feel that God is here is no longer a vague belief, but an experience. Simple, yet full. You cannot avoid crisis. No one can. But you can choose how to walk through it. You can choose to walk through with clenched fists, fearful eyes, a restless mind. Or you can walk through in silence, with slow breath, with a phrase like an invisible shield. There are pains that need time. There are wounds that need healing. But before healing, you must first survive. And sometimes survival means knowing how to sit still, knowing how to breathe, knowing how to call the light by name when all around is darkness. There is a saying, faith is not the absence of fear. It is knowing how to stand still in fear without being swallowed by it. You will feel this more deeply when you practice often. Do not wait for the storm to learn how to hold the roof. And each time you return to breath and mantra, train first. You are reinforcing that. And when needed, you do not struggle to resist. If you have ever fallen into what felt like collapse, you will understand this feeling, a stillness inside. The truth is, crisis does the world outside could fall apart. Crisis only reveals the foundation one place within you that remains intact. That place is the only one you can control. It is the inner chamber no one else can touch, and the key to that door is breath and word. You can write a note and place it by your bed. God is here. I am safe, or I rest in God. Let those words become part of your breathing, not only in panic, even in peace. Because true faith does not arrive only in crisis. Faith is the habit built in days of calm. And then one day when the unwanted arrives, you will realize you no longer tremble as before. You sit down, close your eyes, and begin to inhale for 4 seconds. No one sees, no one hears. But you know you have chosen light. You have stepped out of darkness, and you remain intact. If the eyes are the windows of the soul, then the vision you choose is the map of the world you live in. Some see faults wherever they look. Some see lack wherever they look. And then there are those who simply by stepping into a quiet room recognize the presence of the sacred, because they are seeing with the single eye, an eye not divided, not stained by judgment, not confined by appearances. It is the eye of unity where only one reality remains. God is here. God is all. Not everyone recognizes this at first, for the world has trained you to see with dualistic eyes, good, bad, right, wrong, enough, not enough, high, low. And when the inner eye has not yet been refined, the mind repeats the old lens. You look at someone angry and you see danger. You look at a poor child and you see injustice. But if you shift into the single eye, you will see differently. You see the angry one as a soul in pain, that child as a seed of greatness not yet watered enough. And both, though weary, though scarred, still carry within them an original spark of light. When you begin to practice the single eye, you no longer look at others to categorize, to conclude, to react. You look to recognize the